Hello everybody. Kind of messed it up. Hello everybody. I am back from the Americas. So that's why there was such a lengthy gap in the Patreon schedule and taking on lessons. So thank you all so much for your patience and thank you for sticking by me. Thank you for hanging on in there. I'm sure you did have plenty of content to catch up on though. Righto, so for today, it's a little bit of a change from our normal schedule. It was suggested by another patron that they'd like to see how to use green stuff, or a beginner's introduction into green stuff. So, as we normally do, I am going to potter and ponder around for the first 5 minutes of this class, of this seminar, waiting for people to join in, allow people the chance to catch up. This is currently named Darth Vader Bust, so we need to change that. So let's change that for... Okay, so that's green stuff, an introduction. Okay, hello Frank, how are we? Just pottering around for the first 5 minutes. So, how have you been, Frank? Have you been painting anything? Let me know what you've been painting. So for today's demonstration, I have converted up a few Sisters of Silence. So a couple of weeks ago, I played against a gentleman who used Thousand Suns, and I didn't like it. I really didn't like it. So of course, I've got these girls on the go. I have bought a Calexis, I believe that's how it's pronounced, Calexis Assassin that I've been painting up. And I am aiming to get all kinds of anti-psyker shenanigans on the works, because I did not like what happened to me with this game. He wasn't using Magnus, just the sheer volume of powers coming in my way. It was unsettling, to say the least. So in today's seminar, we will be adding some fur to her cloak. I will also be doing some green stuff around this lady. So this is one of the heavy support units you can buy for the Talons of the Emperor list. Unfortunately, they do not currently have grenade launchers in stock, or they don't have any grenade launchers produced by Forge World. So as a stopgap measure, I've decided to use Dark Elder Shredders. I'm also a Dark Elder fan. I have a Dark Elder army, and I have plenty of these left over. When it comes down to the decision between this and Blasters, well, it's not much of a decision at all, really. I'm good, thank you, Frank. Thank you for asking. So we have a few more people joining in. If you are joining live, please leave a message in the live chat through the YouTube so I can see that you're watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them along. Now is the time to ask, because I may have a miniature lying around that I'll be able to demonstrate a technique for. And I always write down your suggestions to make sure that I cover it at a later date. So this video is in response to a question I received through the Patreon messaging service about green stuff and how to go about using it. So here we are. Here we all are. For these girls, I have used the Witch kit from the Dark Elder plastics. So it's a wonderfully dynamic kit, running legs, and it just gives such a difference to the overall appearance of the miniatures. So with the girls with the halberds, they are running, they're more in a fluid pose, whereas the girls with the grenade launchers are a bit more stolid, a bit more static. So as you can see here, I've got a unit of 5 I've been working on. So these are the Witch legs, these are the Sisters of Silence arms and torsos and heads, and these cloaks are from the Dark Rider kit, the Dark Elves, it's too many darks, Dark Elves Dark Rider kit. So when I used to play Warhammer Fantasy, when that new kit came out, I bought a couple of box sets for the Warlocks, and if you knew anything about Warhammer at the time, you'll understand why I bought 2 box sets of them. But it did leave me with these very, very nice cloaks I wasn't sure what to use with. And today, I'll know exactly how to use them. For the grenade launcher, I have used the just basic standard kit of the Sisters of Silence, and I've used a witch elf head. Now in the set you can make them one of two ways. I can't remember the other name of the girls. Something like the Daughters of Cain. But they come with these really cool ornate masks that you can have on your miniatures. So that's why I've got these on here, again, to help push them apart from the rank and file. So, you didn't come here for my conversion there. Well, I guess it's useful information for you guys if you wanted to know that. So I've assembled these, I've glued them in, but as you can see there's large gaps in the back. Really, really rough stuff under there that we need to plane out. And for this, what better way, what better thing can we use than green stuff? So, green stuff. One tip I would give you guys, never ever buy this stuff in rolls. You'll see it, Games Workshop sell it like this. This is the first time you've encountered green. One of the first ways you've encountered green stuff is in those rolls that you've seen. This does not want to come out of the packaging, where they set side by side one another in a thin strip. Now unfortunately when you buy it like that, the strip touching one another, the green and the yellow, can become slightly harder and basically unusable. So I would advise you can buy it in tubes like this. If you go on Amazon, if you go on eBay, you can find this stuff there. So to start with, what is green stuff? It's Kneadite. That's the technical name for it, spelled K-N-E-A-D-A-T-I-T-E, or colloquially known as green stuff. It comes in two parts, the hardener in blue and the filler in yellow. And what this does, when we combine these two together, it creates a sticky, almost bubblegum-like substance that you can then use to sculpt onto your miniatures. The hardening time, optimally, you can have this work in stages for you. So the first stage takes around 1 hour to 2 hours before it starts the initial hardening. And that way you can do other different kinds of sculpts at that point, but I'll walk you through the different stages and what you can do with it. But nominally, after 24 hours, it's completely and utterly dry. Unlike Milliput, this stuff is quite hard to sand. When you cut into it, it doesn't have a clean cut. So if you were creating more industrial, if you wanted to fill in a side of a Land Raider, say, or if you want to do some scenery that you need to come to a very hard, clean edge, I would suggest you use Milliput, and you can cut and sand that. With this, it's much better at creating organic shapes. So how exactly do you use it? Well, take some of the blue, take some of the yellow, mix up together, and essentially that's it. You mix it up together until it creates green. You can't see any of the blue or the yellow remaining underneath. As you can see from the mixtures, I tend to use a bit more blue in my mixtures than I do the yellow. So this means that the overall substance is slightly harder and it has a lot more tenacity to the grip. So when you use more filler, well, we'll be demonstrating this in a bit. When you use more filler, it tends to spread out very, very thinly as opposed to the blue. So whenever you work with green stuff, it's always worth dampening your hands. And I've heard many people say when it comes to actually sculpting it on the miniature, it's good to use KY jelly. It's good to use like lip balm. I don't personally use those because I find it quite hard to rub off afterward. And if it gets in the mixture, it's quite hard to remove. So this may freak some. This is going to sound disgusting. I don't do this for any commission work, I promise you. So if you have bought a commission from me and I've sculpted something, I don't do this. But spit is actually the best lubricant you can use for your tool and the green stuff. And I've even heard it said that grease from your forehead works very well. So we are in a hobby where it's normally associated that we do particularly have greasy body parts. Well, why not try using your body to your advantage, guys? I mean, Nurgle was released this month, so why not dive in? Rightio, so let's start mixing this stuff up. While I do that, I can have a look at the messages. So, wow, got a lot on here. Great. Finally caught one of these. You all got. I'm very well. How do I pronounce that? Garun Beredo. I'm really sorry if I've completely and utterly butchered that. I'm just gonna call you Guru, if that's not too offensive. Okay, it's got a bit of blue. Okay, Frank finished airbrush stage for 30 custos. Now I'm building the Orion dropship, 6 Grifalcon jet bikes, and converting the new Tribune. Oh boy, you're gonna be so happy next month when Valdor lands. So next month, expect a lot of gold on the Patreon, and if I can swing it, hell, I can tell you guys now. If I can swing it, if the internet connection at the hotel is good enough, I plan to live stream painting Valdor as soon as he comes out. The very night he is released, I will be trying to paint him and posting it up here for you guys to see. But there's a lot of ifs and maybes in that scenario. If Valdor is released, maybe if the internet connection works well. But either way, I'll see if I can film it and get it over to you guys and upload it in some fashion. Right, doing Custodes myself, Frank. Any interest in color scheme you're going with? Yep, so there is a video currently online. If you do want to dive in before that, where we cover how to paint, is it the Achilles Dreadnought? I keep getting mixed up between the two, but there is an Achilles Custodes Dreadnought tutorial there. Ryo. Scott. Oh, Scott. Okay, good. Okay. I can call you Scott now instead of Guru. Okay, great. So, as you can see, this is roughly the mixture that I use. And in order to... So I just need to wet my fingers slightly. And let's mix this up. So, as Scott rightly says, you can mix up Milliput into this to create a different solution. But, as an introduction to green stuffing, I don't want to get too far ahead and overcomplicate the process too much. So for this video, I am just using green stuff. There are other solutions out there you can buy, other putties, brown stuff, grey stuff, that will have different drying qualities, properties, and sculpting properties. You can also buy stuff, Magic Sculpt, or Magisculpt, that is very, very popular with some of the more high-end sculptors. With that stuff, it doesn't dry. It doesn't air dry after 24, 48 hours. No, you have to bake it. So it gives you lots of room to develop a piece and start like just playing with a piece. You can add things, you could take things away, you can maneuver how things are, that sort of thing. So I just need to give this a damn good rub. So is it only Custodes we're working on at the moment, guys? Or are you working on anything else? Anything else interesting? Okay. So this is what green stuff looks like when it's mixed up around 50-50. So let's cut this in half. I'm going to be adding more yellow into this one and more blue into this one. And we'll be able to see the different properties. Actually, let's split this in thirds instead, and we'll keep the original mixture in the middle. So again, when working with these materials, I would highly recommend that you don't let them sit on this kind of surface, because they will start to bind and bond on there after a while. So if you guys haven't been saving this packaging already, I would highly advise it, because this is a really nice material to let your green stuff rest on. So just going to cut some out. Make sure I don't cut these very expensive Primark models. Okay, so I'll just let it sit on there. This way, by having a non-stick surface, we can roll this out. We can do lots more things with it, and we don't have to worry about it sticking to the underneath. Righty, so let's get some more blue and mix it into this mixture. Okay. And mix up. So it can get a bit tough manoeuvring this stuff, especially when you start adding more blue in. It becomes a lot more difficult to use. I wonder, can you hear that? So that's the sound that my fingers need in this. Okay. Slightly darker in appearance to our original mixture. So when I try and squeeze them, see, this is a lot easier to squeeze as opposed to this. There's a lot more hardening agent to this. Let's take the yellow. Add more yellow into this mixture. So, Scott asks, have I ever tried making molds of parts with green stuff? I haven't used it with green stuff. Well, I have used it with green stuff rather, I should say, but I don't really feel like I get the best results from using it with green stuff. If you did want to create molds for yourselves, you could find just simple mold making equipment. Grab yourself some Lego, build it up, pour some resin in there. Is that the right word I'm looking for? It's like this rubbery texture you can create, and then you can pour resin into the mold. I find that to be a lot better than actually trying to take green stuff molds of this. But yep, it can be done. I do find that the replica isn't that great, and you will need further sculpting on top of it. So you can see here how the yellow just breaks up so much more, and it's so much easier. So I try to squeeze on the both of them. So I'm using the same tensile strength, and the yellow just sinks down so much more. Okay, so let's try and actually sculpt something. Another piece of advice I could give you guys, don't start using green stuff straight away. Allow 10 to 15 minutes to cure slightly before you start any detailed sculpting work. When you try and start sculpting with this, so let's take this. So we're just going to break this up. I want to create fur on her back. When I start sculpting, you can see how much everything moves. It's not a case of you just manipulating the portions that you're touching. The rest of the piece moves with it, and you don't want that. I want as much precision as I can possibly get. Now, if you want slightly more precision, you can use slightly more blue in the agent. Another thing I could tell you guys is that don't just put blobs of this stuff on. I know I want a fur here, and so rather handily, I have something I did earlier. So for this, I've put this in bands. You can see how there's like a different texture. There's a different there's different size to the sculpt I've put there. So in order to create that, I'm going to try as closely as I can to replicate the final image. So that's one. Pop that here. So in order to create the fur, I'm just creating these little tubes with pointed ends. You see, as soon as I start trying to manipulate it, everything moves and it comes out of the shape. Just destroys the shape that we're going to build up. So I'm just going to very roughly apply. Okay, and at the end of the lesson, I'm going to try and sculpt something. So if you guys have any suggestions over what I could try and sculpt, be it a skull or maybe like a gem or something, feel free to post it up and we'll see if we can do it in the time remaining. Again, this is an introduction to green stuff, working with green stuff. We will have a lot, if this is popular, we will have a lot more tutorials on this. So I want that piece of fur sticking up. For lubrication, I've just got some water on my tool. Oh, so the tool itself I'm using. So I bought this. It's called the Zale. And it comes to this kind of like spade end. It's a sharp end here. It's quite sharp. Sharp again. And it has a gouging kind of angle. So you can buy these from most dentist supply stores. And I find this to be the best tool when it comes to sculpting. I don't really like using the Games Workshop one, but when it comes to sculpting, like it comes to painting, there are no hard and fast rules. You find something that works for you, and damn the experts, the so-called experts, damn everybody else. If it works for you, stick with it. So under here I can show you how to sculpt a simple cloak as well. So that's quite nice, get a 2-for-1 there. Got some missing piece under here. So let's take up some of our original mixture. Come on, you. Just plodding that in place. You can see how I can use both portions of the tool to my advantage. Okay, so let's create a simple cloak to cover this. For the moment, I'm satisfied with kind of like this very blobby appearance we have with the fur. I could go on a little bit later and tighten it up. So having a non-stick surface really helps us out heaps here. So I need to take my original mixture. Let's add some energy in there. Let's do this. Okay, now I'm going to just dip it in water, pop it back on here. Again with a non-stick surface, so I'm using the sides of my blade. Just got some more water. Let's try and press this out as much as I can. And like anyone who's made a pizza, you've put plenty of flour down, but it still sticks to your goddamn sideboard. So we need to keep lifting this off to make sure it doesn't stick to our board. Ooh, you can see it's starting to come away in my hands. Oh, disaster. So let's pop that onto here again. This time I can use anything non-stick will do the trick. Basically we just need a rolling pin. So I know a lot of artists use a glass rolling pin for this exact reason, because it's non-stick. But for our purposes just now, this is fine. So I need to sync up as much as I possibly can what kind of shape I'll need. For the most part, when it comes to cloaks, it's triangles. Think in triangles when it comes to cloaks. So that should do us nicely. So I know I make this look ridiculously simple to do, and you may have troubles doing this by yourself. Please feel free to contact me anytime you possibly want. Because there are some things I'm very aware I take for granted in my technique. Some things that I do just naturally, and I think, okay, this is how everybody does it. But if you want a further explanation, if you want this broken down even further, please get in touch, because that will make the videos even better if there's things that I'm missing. Okay, so her shoulder pad is coming loose. Okay, just need to secure this on here. Create a little fold here. I'm just going to allow that to set for a few moments. If I start to manipulate it, I'll mess up the entire thing. So I'm just going to pop this girl off to the side, allow it to set. That's why it's really handy working in groups like this. So let's have a look at this charmer. Somebody who just drops planet side, picks up your psychic children and disappears into the night. So same process again. I want some nice fur around her collar. Oh, got a few more viewers. So guys, if you are watching live, please feel free to leave a message. Please feel free to leave a question as well. Any questions. It doesn't have to be just about this. It could be anything rattling around your head. Do you want to know what it was like in America? It was awesome. Really cool getting out there, seeing the guys. It's really nice actually placing some faces to the names. I know a few guys on there are patrons. Hello. I hope you're watching this afterward. Thank you very much for your hospitality. And it won't be the last time I visit that part of the world, as long as you'll have me back. So you see, it's got a bit of a plume here that doesn't quite connect. So what we could do with the magic of green stuff. See, I've just added this very roughly in tune with the sculpt. Okay, we can do the same here with our cloak. Start to fray away. Now if I did any more there, it will start to come apart. So let's leave while that going's good. Oh, there's another portion here. See how the fur is just very abrupt. So come in, try and match that as much as possible. In terms of volume, I'm not worried about the detail at the moment. Yep, that'll do. Great stuff. So we need to allow that to cure for a few moments. As I said, it's great working on this stuff in batches. So you can see it again here. Same thing. Yeah, it just needs fur. Okay. So for the most part, I've been using the one with the more blue in there because I find it has a lot more grip, a lot more tenacity. Oh, brilliant. So Frank is at the Weekender next week. Yeah, great. We can actually meet in person, grab a drink. Who else will be at the Weekender? Anybody else lucky enough to be going? Because I know a few people haven't attended because of it's a Necromunda weekend as well. It's a bit of a shame. But it's always good to see old familiar faces. I won't be wearing any logos or anything like that. I will be wearing my Age of Darkness hoodie because that is by far the most comfortable thing that I own. So what do you think you'll be seeing at the Weekender, Frank? Any hopes? I mean, Valdo seems like it's pretty much nailed on at this point. But any surprises? Do you think we'll see? Anything you're hoping for? Okay. So whenever you hear that little clinking noise, it means I'm popping the tool in the water. So I don't spit on anything, because mainly when I sculpt, it's for other people, and I personally wouldn't want to receive a sculpt that's covered head to toe in spit. So just breaking this up even more, adding more. Whoop. Okay, just trying to get roughly in that place. Okay, I'm pretty satisfied with that. Oh, see here, abrupt edge with the fur. Let's smooth that out. Oh no. Okay, she'll be popped off to the side, and I'll do it at my own time rather than try and fix it. Oh, actually, another great thing when it comes to green stuff. Just take a nice blob, pop it on here, pop it on here, and voila. But we will need to allow that to completely cure before messing around with it. So she'll be popped off to the side. Right, while our other Custodes Power Fists, okay. Oh yeah, right-handed Power Fist. That would be amazing if we managed to get those for the Weekender. I know a lot of people have been using the command set by Forge World. I think it comes with a right-handed Power Fist, which is quite cool. Or they've been using Huron's, Lugford Huron's right fist, but again that become ruinously expensive doing that. Okay, so let's show you another technique when it comes to working with green stuff. This isn't really a commonly known one. You can actually speed up the drying process by hitting it with our old friend Tony and Guy. So let's see what happens when we hit this with a hairdryer. So excuse the noise, guys. So you can see how gloopy this has become. Almost becomes a paste. And why on earth would you want to do this? Well, if during the hardening process you want to reactivate and make it slightly more malleable, well, you can heat it up. But it does lose all definition when you do that, and it does become very, very gloopy. But when it starts to reharden, it will really start to reharden much, much than before. So I guess with the energy we'll lend in it when it leaves, it helps out the drying process. Another thing you could do that I know particularly old school sculptors doing, they get a little can, like a can of baked beans, what have you. Empty out the baked beans, obviously the baked goods, and they have several lights around the subject to help speed up the drying process. Again, I've never done that. I normally just allow 12-24 hours, or if I'm working on it, I make sure I set an evening aside. That way, after 1-2 hours, I can be pretty secure that all my sculpture work is done. So in order to speed up the process somewhat for this girl, we're going to do exactly the same method. Let's heat her up. Hopefully it won't disfigure the sculpt too much that we've built up. If it has, well, we'll just deal with it. Ideally, you do not need to do this. It's only because we're on a very tight time frame for the seminar. This needs to be done within an hour. In your own time, please allow around half an hour before you start actually sculpting, before you start working into this. But needs must. Yep. Didn't like that. So we just need to allow this. Oh, look what's happened to her sword. So just going to give it a few moments to dry and settle down, and it should be ready to sculpt once more. And don't worry, guys, don't fret. I will be straightening. I'll be straightening out the sword. So before it comes to the painting stage. Again, as ever, time is the ultimate mistress. So let's add some green stuff to the shoulder. And again, you really shouldn't do this, guys. Don't do this. Don't do what I'm showing you. Only do what I tell you. Don't do what you're seeing in front of you right now. So I just want to glue on her shoulder pad again. Okay, just need to allow this to re-harden slightly before I start messing around with it. Even. I wonder if this will work. Kind of slightly gummed appearance. Okay. Trying to manipulate that as much into place. So this brings us very neatly onto some other tools we can use. So I'm sure you have seen these guys. Anybody with a passing interest in sculpting should own some of these. Clay shapers. So again, very common, very easy to find online on Amazon, places like that. Very cheap. Once you buy a set, you can, I mean, it's just lasts a lifetime. You could go from very hard to slightly harder, slightly softer rather, to softest. I've only just noticed this. I'm embarrassed to say I've only just noticed this. But the harder it is, the darker it is. So hardest, hard, soft. Things you know, things you learn. Anyway, okay. So let's try and soften this transition out. So unlike using the Xale, the sculpting tool, this is more used for just popping it into place, just smoothing things out. So where you can think of the hard metal tools being the sketch stage, just getting things established, this stage is very, very much about smoothing and bringing everything together. Okay. Haven't quite smoothed that out enough. So, and when this does finally dry, you can file it to make sure it. But when you do file it, make sure you use a wet and dry sandpaper to give it that seamless appearance. Seamless blend. That is probably the best way of creating a seamless blend with your cloak. Okay, let's smooth this out. See what tool is best. Okay, right, so let's see how this is handling. Oh, much better. Good. Okay. So we can start the sculpting process. Good. That turned out much better than I thought it would. So with it slightly cured, let's see if we could bring this in slightly more. Okay, I want to create the first line, the first pattern. So that's my first line. I don't really want to manipulate, don't really want to change the area of the sculpt that much. I just want to add lines at this point. And again, it's quite thick, the fur at this point. The further we get into this, the finer the cuts will become and the finer the end result. But at this point, I just want to add deepest grooves to the sculpt. So this is a problem. I hope I don't touch this area because that would suck. Okay, so let's give that a few moments to set. Let's have a look at the messages. Right, so hoping for Valdor and conversion kits for the missing weapons, the Custodes, and Rogel Dawn would be great too. Yeah, I got this funny feeling we're going to see Valdor. Well, I think a Valdor will be available to buy, and we'll see a preview, maybe a pre-order of Dawn, or maybe both. Can we? Yeah. Can we be that that greedy? Can we ask for both? Can we get both? Maybe Alfarius. Perhaps he's released already. So that's the old joke. Bit plain, but that's what transfers are for. Plain as ours to work with. Yeah, Tartarus plastic kits. Yeah. So, Clay Shapers, Scott's Purple, really good recommendation. Green Stuff World. So, Green Stuff World do some amazing stuff. If you wanted custom bases, that they do these pin rollers, which are just fantastic. Get yourself over to Green Stuff World. Really cannot recommend. Wow, look at that sword. Look at that. Jeez Louise, that's special. Okay, hello Sam, how are we? Right, so let's start developing this a touch more. So I've got the lines, now I need to get some of the texture to give it a bit of life, to make it look like actual fur rather than just lines. So I've just added some kinks in the hair. Anyway, I think could do with a bit of patterning, a bit of a kink. So much more natural that's become from those very thick blotches to this. So the further we get in, the more refined the process will become. And I will be straightening her bleed out. She smashed up too many Thousand Suns. Didn't realise that my hairdryer was that hot. So Sam, what are you working on? Anything special? Are you going to the Weekender? So I'm just adding more and more detail. So if you guys were, well, if you are Space Wolves players and you wanted to resculpt the fur and the Varangier, you can see just how simple it is to do. So I know there was a lot of complaints about that kit, but nothing, a simple X-Acto knife and some hardcore green stuff work, won't fix. Just adding a few kinks here and there. Oh, my finger's stuck or something. Ah, this is absolutely caked in glue. Hold on, I'm just going to blow on this. One moment, guys. That's why you should never use super glue like that, because it just drowns out detail. Hopefully you can see how it's starting to develop. Ooh, so Sam unfortunately is not attending the Weekender, but he is working on some Mark V Assault Marines for Dark. Wow, Mark V Assault Marines for Dark Angels. You'll have to explain that a bit more. That's a whole conundrum right there. I mean, first of all, who takes Assault Marines? Who's in the Blood Angel? I've got about 50 of those guys all painted up now. Dark Angels? Why Dark Angels? And Mark V, yeah, again, it's an interesting mark of armor. Most of my Blood Angel stuff, well, I've tried to make the destroyers at least in Mark V as a late siege era force. So why the decision to go for Mark V? Personally, Mark V is my favorite. That's the mark of armor I think about when it comes to the Heresy. Okay, it's starting to look like something now. It's starting to look like actual fur. You can see from those initial lines that we've made, we can go on and develop them with these little prods with the brush. Make sure you see. Oh. Sorry, I've been sculpting out of screen for you guys. Sorry about that. Let's bring it slightly out. So that is how you go about manipulating green stuff and how you create a very, very simple fur pattern as well as a very simple fur cloak. So these techniques, they're only really meant for plugging in gaps with miniatures, doing a little renovation work. They're not meant to do full-on sculpts, at least in this portion of this series. If you guys would like to see a full-on sculpt, I mean, I've never done one before, but you know, I'm game. Let's give it a whirl. What's the worst that could happen? And if that's the case, if you would like to see me sculpt something from scratch, what would you like to see me sculpt? Maybe a bust of some kind? Maybe a Primarch bust? Maybe? It's going to be disastrous, but it's going to be hella fun to do it. Okay, and that is today's seminar. How to go about manipulating green stuff and simple fur work. If you have any questions, now is the time to get them in, guys. Otherwise, I'm going to say toodaloo and finish off the rest of these gals. In fact, I'm going to start finishing them off while I wait for you guys to get in the last few questions. if you have any. So, Junkie patched together armor after kicking the Nightlord's heads. Oh, very cool theme. Yeah, my guys, because they're based on Terra, they have all different kinds of armor marks across. So some will have Mark 5 chest plates, some will have Mark 4 gauntlets. It's purely patched together to try and get them functional to just function and fight on Terra. Okay, I don't think there are any questions popping in, so I'm going to bid you adieu. Thank you so much, guys, for joining in. So next month you're going to see a lot of gold. Custodes month, Custodes February. I'll have to come up with a catchier title. But until then, I'll catch you next time, guys. Thank you so much again, and bye-bye.